that Northwest. This is for the good old days. Back when we was going to the Memorial Coliseum, and then they went to the Rose Garden, and then they brought something new in town.
Hello, welcome back to your favorite, I hope, Sports Talk Mostly podcast. This is episode 12. We're cooking along. It's been a couple of weeks since the last episode 11, obviously. But there has been a lot going on in sports. We finally, thank God, have live sports on television. So we will definitely get to talk about that. Apparently, people in the DC area are now fans of the Washington football team. So that's another piece of the news that's been floating around lately. And apparently, I am now an NHL fan of the Seattle Kraken. So, lots of new developments in the sports world. Definitely a few more culture topics that we will get to at the end of the episode in the culture portion. But I am so excited for my interview guest today. Obviously, if you guys have seen the show Flyers, you know who it is. And if you are familiar with ESPN or ESPN Radio at all, I'm sure you've heard of him and seen his face and heard his voice here and there. Today's interview guest is Clinton Yates. So definitely relevant to have him on the show with everything that's going on with the Washington Redskins. You guys can hear more about that in the interview portion. And don't forget to check out his secret segment, the 10 random question segment we do. You gotta be a member. So go to the website, hit the Patreon page, and sign up. There are now, I believe, 5, including Clinton's secret segments, available. And I will actually be releasing for free the very first secret segment with Meets On, Love's Team. So make sure you guys check that out. The secret segment is a really fun, just sort of lighthearted segment that I do with every interview guest that is not sports related and a little bit more personal, but lighthearted. So check that out. And I don't think I should waste any more time because we got a lot to talk about. NBA. Wow, NBA. Obviously, rocking my Blazers shirt. So I'm so happy that basketball is back. I mean, if I said this on Twitter, but if there was a points system for my mental health, it definitely jumped about 50 points just with the return of basketball and baseball. So I, for one, am very fortunate that we get live sports again. So, NBA, Jamal Crawford and Michael Beasley were both last-minute additions to the Brooklyn Nets team. Unfortunately, Beasley did test positive for coronavirus, so I do not believe that he will be playing with the team. I think he actually never went to the bubble, if I'm not mistaken. But Jamal Crawford is one of those guys that, right along with Michael Beasley, right along with J.R. Smith, and so many others, frankly, Jamal Crawford has been one of those names all season long that we have heard people say, why isn't he on a team? So, really big ups to Jamal Crawford. He definitely deserves that spot with the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, they're missing quite a few of their main guys. Like, Karis LeVert has so many opportunities to get buckets with this opening of their team structure. So, really excited to see Jamal Crawford perform, and I think everybody is. And really wishing the best of health to Michael Beasley and any of the other guys that are testing positive here in these last-minute moments before scrimmages and games. Obviously, full season swing starts next week on the 30th. Scrimmages just started this past Wednesday, and those have been televised on NBA TV for those of you who do not know. And it's been so refreshing watching those. If anybody watched the Blazers scrimmage yesterday against the Pacers, you know that CJ McCollum is definitely trying to dust off the rust. He bricked a couple of really easy dogs, but I don't know. I think everybody's gonna take a couple of games to get back in their groove and get those jitters and those goofball moments out. I mean, they essentially had a summer in the middle of their season, so I want to say it's expected. And then switching gears really quick to MLB, opening day 2020 was yesterday, and if you guys are smart, you'll figure out what day I'm filming this on. And obviously my Yankees faced the Washington Nationals, the defending champion from last year. They did get rained out, but the Yankees were determined the winner after 5 innings. And yes, I have already started talking shit to Red Sox fans on Twitter. So, 3-game series. Obviously, when they do series now, it's hosted fully in one team's favor. So, some different changes this year. We saw Giancarlo Stanton of the Yankees was made history with his home run yesterday, being the first designated hitter to bat in a National League hosted opening day game. So obviously we know how MLB can get with their very specific stats, but that one actually does happen to be a big one and a memorable one. So congrats to Giancarlo Stanton for getting the first at-bat and also home run on that at-bat in that new rule. And there's a couple new pitching rules that MLB is looking at. It revolves around how a pitcher has to face a minimum of 3 batters. And if the inning ends before they face 3 batters, they do not have to come up for the following inning. So that is a little bit of an alteration from the previous rules. And again, I am just so excited. We will cover some predictions at the very end of the episode, since we have predictions to make now. And yeah, I'm just so excited that baseball is back in action. I got super emotional yesterday watching the opening lineup for the Giants and Dodgers game. I just thought it was, first of all, beautiful national anthem by an extremely talented black man, and I just thought it was so long overdue that all of these players were taking a knee, grabbing onto the rope together, and showing their unity. Definitely got worked up when I saw Cody Bellinger put his hand on the shoulder of Mookie Betts. I think that was an extraordinary display of both his loyalty to honoring veterans and troops by standing for the national anthem, as I'm sure Cody Bellinger has his entire life, but also showing unity with his teammate by placing the hand on the shoulder of Mookie Betts. I'm gesturing down because I'm gesturing like I'm putting my hand on someone's shoulder, but that display of unity by putting your hand on his shoulder as you stand in the way that you're comfortable honoring the national anthem, I thought that was just, like I said, so moving. I was standing in front of the TV just bawling. So that is another reason why I'm thankful to have sports back, is just to see what I believe are these long overdue moments of unity and our favorite players taking a stand for their beliefs and taking a stand for the brothers that they've made in the sport. So really great moment in MLB. I just had to touch on that for a second. Moving along, I don't want to waste too much time because we got a lot to talk about. NCAA women's basketball. This is a big one for me because if you know, I adored her my entire childhood. She is the reason why I love Tennessee Volunteers. She is the reason why I'm a huge Pat Summitt fan. But Kara Lawson was named the head coach of Duke women's basketball. And as you guys know, I'm a huge Duke fan. Shout out to the Singler family. And I was so excited to hear this news. I know that Kara is going to add so much value to this program, and she's going to be able to teach these young women how to shine. And it's just going to be really exciting to see what she does with their program. I can only imagine how, working as essentially the partner for the women's side of the basketball program with Coach K is going to elevate Kara Lawson's existing basketball IQ exponentially. So it's going to be awesome to see how she disperses that IQ through her players and her teams. And I'm just really excited to see some Duke basketball, to be honest. So, also on that note, WNBA starts this weekend. I am so excited. I am having a little bit of confliction because personally, at this point in the year, I would be totally focused on WNBA. So I am trying to put a little bit more personal focus on WNBA. Obviously, I still want to watch NBA games, but for me, these women need their time to shine too, and I fully think that the men would agree with that. So please, if you are a basketball fan, don't forget to watch the WNBA games. There is so much action. It's not boring. And if you don't believe me, watch a game, and then we'll talk. And then moving on to UFC, after that little reprimand there. UFC 251 was a couple of weekends ago. Obviously a little late on the recap, but still want to get to it. I thought Rose Namajunas had an incredible fight. She is such a badass. Masvidal wants an immediate rematch with Usman. Personally, I was a little disappointed by the fight. I definitely thought that Masvidal's quick weight cut for that fight and that last minute acceptance of the fight definitely affected him in negative ways. So I really would like to see Masvidal versus Usman with an adequate preparation time for both sides. I think that would give us the fight that we deserve. And Masvidal, like I said, wants an immediate rematch with Usman because of that circumstance, I believe. And I'm all for it. So my guy Holloway, Max Holloway, the Flying Hawaiian, also took an L, and Jose Aldo also took an L for UFC 251. And unfortunately, I just hate to say it, but I think Jose Aldo is ready to hang it up. I don't see the same intensity and the same fire from him in the octagon as we used to see. And I just really think that he's in a place where it's going to start to affect him physically. And I mean this in the way that if he gets a really serious injury, it could really, really mess him up for the rest of his life. So personally, I would like to see Jose Aldo consider hanging it up. I would like to see him actually move into more of a coaching role and potentially train some of these younger guys. So definitely best wishes to Jose Aldo, and I cannot wait to see a Max Holloway return. I know that was an incredible fight. I think Holloway should have won, but hopefully there might be a rematch for that one too. So, I guess I got through that faster than I thought I would. But if you guys want to, please head over to the secret segment and listen to Clinton Yates' secret segment before you listen to the interview, and then come back and listen to the interview. It is going in right here, so I'll see you afterwards for the culture segment and some predictions. Enjoy. All right, as you guys know, our interview guest is the one, the only Clinton Yates. God, you have so many titles. What is your official title?
I'm a columnist for the Undefeated. I'm an on-air panelist for Around the Horn. Also Now or Never.
Okay.
Shout out to my boys, Gabino and Rich.
Yep.
And I'm also a host on ESPN Radio.
Yeah, with Elle Duncan. I love her. She's a gem. You're so lucky to work with her.
I mean, it's a little bit more than luck. You know what I'm saying? I
Definitely.
work hard, but yeah, she's
Definitely.
friends. I mean, Elle and I have been friends for a while, so like, it's me and her and Shannon Penn, who's the producer of that show. I love Shannon. Been knowing Shannon for a while too, so it's a good blend, man. I'm not gonna lie, like, you know, that show is important to us for a lot of reasons in terms of like everything that we have to express in terms of the rest of America, but I think it's also important for us personally as ESPN employees. You know, we're 3 black employees that came up in radio, and for us to be able to work together on a radio show about stuff like that, it gives us a space to feel safe about what we do. So that's important.
Definitely. And you guys have some really important conversations on there. So I encourage anybody that listens to my little old podcast to listen to your guys's, because it's definitely worth a lot more than mine. So
I mean, it's fun. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I know it's called The Intersection. I know it's like serious topics, but, we try to keep it cool. We're not trying to be out here, because I'm not like that. I'm not trying to be out here smacking people in the face with textbooks. That's not my steez.
No, that's definitely not. So, how long have you been a part of ESPN, Undefeated, and all of that? And how did that opportunity make its way to you? I know that previously you were with the Washington Post. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
So, I've been at ESPN for 4 years, and I first went when Kevin Merida, who's our editor-in-chief, he was the managing editor at the Post. And I've known Kevin's another brother from D.C. He was one of the most, he's arguably one of the most important black men that's ever worked for that paper.
Yeah.
And, we were friends, and he was a mentor, and still is, and I wrote for him. Here's the deal. I was an editor at Express for a long time. I started writing the newsletter, Lunchline. Lunchline was a lot of fun. That was my first real foray into write whatever I wanted. And people were like, oh, this is kind of cool. You kind of got a goofy little life. And I was like, yeah, you know what I mean? But it kind of gave me a voice to start writing a column. And so when I started writing a column, I was writing for Local. And this is kind of a wild story. People don't know this, but I was dead serious about that shit. You know what I'm saying? It was my city. The world's changing, gentrifying and all this.
Yeah.
It was a really important thing to me, represent everything that I knew. And I remember at one point I felt like I'd written every story I wanted to say, just in terms of how I felt. And one day I was watching a basketball game with Dan Steinberg, if you don't know him, Sports Bob. And we were watching a game at the bar, and somebody had just left the sports section. And he goes, and we were friends. We've been friends for a while. Just, we were on Twitter, and whatever. We were friends. We played on a softball team together, so
cool.
And that's real.
Yeah.
And so he was like, "Dude, you should write for the sports section." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever, man. That's the Washington Post sports section. I came up, reading that and caring about that." And he was like, "Dude, you care a lot more than the rest of us in that section.
Right.
Trust me." And I was like, "Really?" And I was like, and so 2 weeks later, I was on the Washington Post sports section.
That's so
was that. And I remember they were like, "Yeah, you can do it for a month." And I was like, "All right, I can do this for a month. I got to get back to my fucking beat, I got stories to write." And then it became 2 months, and then it became 3 months. And I remember I went to Kevin, specifically, I was like, "Dude, what's going on?" He was like, "Bro, you're not going back." And I was like, "What do you mean?" No, and I was offended. Legit.
Right, because you had your own project. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I'm doing this because somebody thought it was a good idea. He's like, "Bro, you're 10 times better at this. Just deal with it."
Yeah.
And I was like, well, and I was a sports writer in college. I played 3 sports in high school. It wasn't foreign to me, but it had never occurred to me how much more easily that came, and how much my perspective, even in terms of just the basics of life in sports, forget about being black and from DC.
Right.
People were like, "Yo, for real?" I'm a big baseball fan. You know what I'm saying? I care about hockey. I like a lot of things that aren't just football and basketball.
Definitely.
So people were like, "This dude," you know what I'm saying? It was just more interesting to people when I wrote about sports.
Right.
Which was fine, because ultimately when I wrote about things in the sports world that weren't sports, I had that base where people were like, "Oh, okay, this dude's pretty observant just in general."
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it worked out,
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that makes your, not just your TV presence, but just your journalism very specific to you too, is the fact that you are able to observe real life things and very eloquently relate them to sports situations. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people really appreciate about your stories.
That's the fun part to me. You know what I'm saying? I remember when I first got to college, I went to Miami, Ohio. And, I'd meet guys, and they'd be like, "Oh, so what's the story?" When I'm like, "Dude, just hang out. I'll write about whatever." And a lot of people found that very, not just disarming, but also just kind of it was much easier for them to understand why I was doing something. I was like, "Look, if I don't know you, this is not really going to be fun for me either. We're all out here in the middle of nowhere. Why would I try to misrepresent that just for the sake of one thing? That's stupid. I'm stronger than that." So,
definitely.
And how that translated is that, if it doesn't matter to me in terms of unless it's kind of completely ridiculous or completely about real life, you know what I'm saying? Like, why bother?
Yeah.
Like, I ain't got time for that.
Definitely. I agree. So switching topics just slightly, you mentioned you're a big baseball fan. Obviously, being from the DC area, you are a well-known Nationals fan. What was it like watching them win the World Series in 2019?
I mean,
if you can find words for it.
It's actually pretty crazy, but like, I mean, my whole baseball upbringing is kind of a personal journey,
right?
And you know what it meant to me to be able to get back to the game from a journalist standpoint, and you know, cover young black players and tell those stories and meet a lot of the guys that I just didn't, not just grew up knowing, but like the dudes who weren't like the big time superstars. You know, people ask me about who my favorite players are and stuff.
Yep.
Like, it wasn't Ken Griffey Jr. Like, I mean, those dudes were stars, but like
right.
the regular dudes who just played, like those guys were the fun ones. Those are the reasons why I thought I could be a player. So, you know, going through that whole personal growth, and then my kid brother, who I was his little league coach. You know, I mean, like I played in high school and I played travel. I mean, he stopped playing after Little League, and he came back on his own volition to play in high school and try out.
Yeah.
He just wanted to.
Yeah.
So, by the time the World Series came around, like, I'll never forget this, man. My boss at ESPN Radio, I mean, I was going to cover this game, but he gave me tickets. He was like, dude, take who you ever want. I hit my brother up, and he was like, yeah, we're absolutely going. So,
yeah.
I mean, it was me and him at game 3, and it was the first game there, and it was like, it was really emotional. They didn't win a game in that homestand. You know, they lost all 3.
Right.
And so they go back to Houston, and I happened to be in Connecticut at the time for a show.
Okay.
And I had to hop a flight like first thing the next morning to get to Game 7 because they won Game 6. So I get to Houston on a year because I had been there before. I mean, I had been there for the first 2 games.
Right.
So I get there for Game 7, and you know, like. This is a funny story. I actually almost got in trouble because I was in the clubhouse, like, when the game ended.
Oh, no.
Which is a whole other story. Yeah. So, like, you know, it was pretty, but I mean, you know, watching from the field, seeing how he hit that homer, like, it was, I mean, it's hard to explain. So, after that happened, you know, they won, you're in the locker room, it's just kind of like, I mean, look, at that point, I'm still a journalist. You know, the fan is inside me, the fan's online, the fan is not the person present. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing my job.
Right.
But after that, you know, you go down to 4 Seasons, where all the fans are, all the media people you know. Bro, we partied until like 4 a.m. with the players.
Yep.
It was like, you know, that was that. I had to get on a flight. People forget this. They won that game the day before Halloween.
Oh.
And I had to get to Houston. Excuse me, not to Houston. I had to get from Houston to Dallas to do a TV show the next day. So it's 4 a.m. I flight at 7 a.m. It's 4 a.m.
Oh,
I'm in
man.
downtown Houston. Didn't even get to the hotel room.
Nope.
Just went to the airport from there, and I was like, and I started writing, because I started writing this column, and I never forget this. I mean, I was just bawling at this breakfast bar. It was intense, you know. It was like my whole life, it kind of come full circle. At that point, I got to be there, and I got to look at it, you know. And I was crying so hard in that airport. The lady's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "I've never been better," you know. And she just kind of understood. I was like, I'm from DC. Like, my team just won a World Series, and she was like, I was like, this is really important.
Yeah.
So I purchased my brother and stuff. She was like, wow. You know, I was like, I just got to finish writing this. She gave me my food for free. I mean, I gave her $50, but like,
aww.
you know, like, you know, I got on the plane, and the next day I did the show, but like, it was almost like I had to let it out then because I wasn't going to be able to. You know what I'm saying? Once I got to Dallas, and I had to do other stuff. You know, so
yeah.
You know, it was a cool trip. I mean, not gonna lie, it was grandly increased in value by the fact that A, I got to see games in my hometown.
Definitely.
B, I got to go to one with my brother. And C, I got to be there when they actually won the damn thing.
Yeah.
You know, like they're like in the building.
And D, it was against the Astros.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, later we figured out that was like really important.
A big deal. Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty well. I mean, because also like it was. I mean, the Sticks ended up winning the WNBA championship later, but like it was a whole run, man.
Right.
You know, and it was like, wow, this one happened.
Yeah.
This is the one I cared about.
Yeah.
You know? And not that I didn't care about the sticks. Certainly not that I didn't care about the cast. That's a whole other part of my life.
Right.
You know, but
right.
This one was deeply personal in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, you're a lifelong baseball fan, so it's definitely, that's the reason why I had to.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I got multiple gloves. Like, you know what I'm saying? I was a coach.
Yeah.
I know, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, baseball is what?
Yeah, it's blood.
Baseball is the sports language through which I speak through all other things.
Definitely. I love that analogy. So I know that the one question I'm going to get, because I get it quite often, is how? How did you get Clinton Yates for an interview? And what a lot of people don't know is we actually connected via Twitter when you did a segment on Outside the Lines about athletes and cannabis. And
yes.
I reached out to you. We exchanged some thoughts, obviously in agreement of each other, and I supported wholeheartedly the segment that you did, and was actually fortunate enough to pass along the name of my episode 1 guest, Anna Simons, who you actually interviewed for her thoughts as a rugby player on cannabis as well. So partly to answer that question for the audience, but also partly to ask you kind of your thoughts on how cannabis in sports, obviously NFL, NBA, and MLB have had some developments in cannabis since that first story on Outside the Lines. So what are your thoughts about those changes, and what do you foresee in the future?
Well, for those of you who don't know, the reason I hit you up after that OTL segment was because I was writing a column about it based on the winter meetings. Because at the time, I was in San Diego, and MLB had just declared that they were going to decriminalize effectively weed. I mean, I'm using shorthand terms here for, you know, a lot of different things, but basically they said, you know, we're not going to pop people for smoking because, they said we're not going to pop, damn it. They said we're not going to pop for smoking anymore because, you know, America's not really there. That's kind of a waste of our resources. And also, you know, Tyler Skaggs had just passed.
Yep.
And after his whole episode, after that whole episode took his life.
Yes.
You know, I think MLB had to take a real serious look at what drug abuse really meant to them.
Definitely.
And so I just told a story. I mean, you know, I talked to your homegirl and I said, let me find a dispensary, you know, and I just went.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, you know, this is how easy it is.
Yeah.
You know, this should be this easy for ball players.
Totally.
And the reason I say that is because it informed a lot of my opinion about a lot of things because, you know, I mean, like I said, I'm a brother from D.C., and so, like, the concept of smoking weed as, like, a recreational activity or even just, frankly, a coping mechanism is something that a lot of people are very familiar with.
Right.
But I also understand, because I'm not an idiot, that, like, you know, it matters in your life beyond just, you know, let me smoke this blunt, you know what I mean, or let me put one in the air. I mean, like, you know, there's real value to that.
Yes.
So
yeah.
That whole evolution is something I learned about also because of the way the district handled this.
Yeah.
You know, the city itself, when I used to cover the city, I mean, they decriminalized.
Right.
You know, and they made it not legal, but you could basically trade, you know, for weed.
Yep.
And so I was familiar with this on a personal level from a legislation standpoint.
Yeah.
You know, and so my mind has changed. Like, no matter what I personally thought about smoking weed, I understood the value of psychological decriminalization and destigmatization as much as anything else. So, I mean, where this goes in the future, I don't know, man. Do I think I'm going to see NFL teams prescribing tinctures or whatever? I don't know that we're going to get that far because I don't know that as long as, quite frankly, old white men continue to own teams and pay people, that they're going to be okay with telling black people that it's okay to smoke weed.
Definitely.
I just don't see that happening. I mean, sure, maybe if we think about, like, I don't know, some MLS squad down the line that says, hey, here's the cannabinoids that are within reason for our treatment sessions.
Yeah.
If you're in off season or whatever, like, it might get folded into the general concept of treatment, but I don't think it's going to be something where, you know, like, any league is on the forefront of the cause. And I don't know if they need to be. That's not what sports are there for.
Right.
I just think that if they can look at what cannabinoids are for their restorative purposes,
I
think they'll be able to understand that it will make players not just better, because that's kind of a looser term, but what I think is happier to play.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I focus on a lot, you know what I'm saying? Having covered, and that's why I think it's important sometimes to cover athletes at a lot of different age ranges, because you start to understand, yo, man, if guys don't want to play, it sucks. You know what I mean? And, like, that goes for high school kids.
Right.
That goes for men. That goes for women. That goes for
so true.
revenue sports. That goes for all of it.
Yep.
And, like, at the pro level, particularly at levels where the game is so intense, like, if people don't want to play, the product is good.
Yep.
And I think that's what a lot of these leagues are going to realize. If guys are going to feel better and women are going to feel better about getting out on the field, then they can heal themselves in a way that works. And that's the only reason I think that this is going to be more progressive down the line, is because it's simply going to be a psychological thing as much as it's going to be a physical thing, and they're not going to be able to help it. People are going to do it anyway.
Yep.
So you might as well find a way to learn something about it so they can do it for their best, for their best effort.
Yeah, that's so true. And I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think the one thing that we hear from aging athletes, no matter what league or sport that they play in, is just how much more difficult the recovery gets on their body, the training gets on their body. And, unfortunately, Tyler Skaggs had to be such a real situation of that. I mean, we obviously don't need to get into the specifics, but the fact that he was prescribed that by a team doctor when there's other options available that are safer, once some research occurs, I just don't understand why leagues wouldn't push for that also. So...
Right. I mean, look, it wasn't just that he was prescribed by a team doctor. The Skaggs situation, we don't need to get into the details, but that detail matters.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He was abusing that drug via the access he had from the team.
Yeah.
And if you look at he was an addict. And if you look at I don't want to say this too crassly, but if you look at the bottom end of what happened.
Yeah.
When you have a problem with opioids, it's a much bigger problem than you do if you do have it with cannabinoids. So I think at that point, people are forced to look like, yo, we can't have this. Fine, if that dude wants to smoke weed all his life, he wouldn't be dead. And that sounds crass, and maybe not even true in sort of larger metaphysical sense, but, like, that was what most people thought.
Right. That's how people saw it.
After the winter meetings, it was like, okay, well, let's make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yes.
Because... especially got playing in California.
Yep.
You know what I mean? With, like, this real deal out here. You know what I mean? I'm not even being funny about that. Like,
no.
That would have been a legitimate option for him. That's why that whole story about how you just go down the street and get this was so important.
Exactly.
It's not some mystery. You're not going to somebody's basement handing them a bunch of money in a bag.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
that's how it's happening.
Well, and I think that's why people like Anna are so important, is they're a living, breathing example of what somebody with safe access can look like and act like and feel like and what they're capable of. Because I think that you brought up a great point about the basement and the bag and all that stuff, is when you don't know where it's grown or how it's grown, of course there's questions about, well, what else is in it? Well, how do you know if it's effective? Well, how do you know if it has these cannabinoids other than just THC? And it starts to become a question. But when you can actually provide safe access and you actually have reputable places and sources that you can obtain these things from, it becomes much more realistic.
Also, that's exactly true, and the reason why people believe that is because they trust the judgment of the people who are consuming.
Right.
And that's one of the things I talked to Anna about. She's a white woman.
Yep.
So people believe that she's responsible.
Right.
And that's a big part of all this, is that if people don't just in general believe that folks can be responsible with things, they're not going to trust them. And so when you see somebody who's some wide out in the NFL, they're like, oh, that man was just going to be smoking his heart away. And you're like, that's not, that's not fair.
Right.
You know what I mean? But people like Anna, she said as much, and I was happy she did. She recognized that privilege. She recognized that position and was like, yo, if I could be a beacon for people who know how to do this, it's not about passing a test. It's just about showing that this isn't ridiculous.
Exactly.
Like, let's get on with it. So
yeah.
I really appreciate her in that regard.
Definitely, yeah. And I'm so thankful that I could connect you two in that regard, because literally, I mean, I tweeted within seconds of seeing that Outside the Line segment, but she was the first person who came to mind that I was like, he has to talk to her.
No,
so
she's cool, man. She was really informative. I was glad to do this, so thanks again.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. you mentioned that you have your podcast, The Intersection with Elle Duncan, and on one of your episodes, you recently mentioned that you have never been to a college game day.
No.
What is this blasphemy?
Why?
I
You gotta understand, I'm from DC, man. Like, college football is not that big a deal. I went to Miami, Ohio, and, like, trust me, they got a good team. I mean, I covered Ben Roethlisberger when he was there, and they ended up number 10 in the country, but, like, went no game day.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that just wasn't something I was doing. And, you know, also, people kind of forget that, like, college football is in kind of a lot of weird places in America.
That's
like,
true.
And that's just specifically going. Like, you ain't just showing up. I mean, I'm an urban dude. You know what I mean? Like, when would I ever be going to college game day? You know what I mean? Like, just kind of on a basic level. Like, I don't really follow college football like that. And unless I got to work it, I didn't. So, you know, it's just been one of those things. Like, I'm not going to that many places in the South. It ain't happening. You know what I mean?
Yep, I hear you.
I just hadn't gotten to that many other places.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to a lot of places around the country.
Yeah.
Not for no football. You know, so that's...
So on that note, I think everybody, based on the previous conversations in this episode, can guess where you might say, but what are like the top 3 schools you'd go to if you could go to college game day? Like schools that you appreciate their football squad. Who are your top 3?
I don't care about football. I care about towns.
Okay.
And so,
okay.
Like, it would probably be... Like, if Texas had one in Austin, that'd be cool. I'd go to that. I would probably go... You know what I would actually go? This is going to sound a little weird. I would love to go to one at a service academy.
Oh.
I think that's pretty cool. I grew up in D.C., which is relatively close to Annapolis.
Yeah.
And, like, last summer, too, I got to cover the plebe climb.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you know what that is. But, like, where they climb up the obelisk on campus with all the lard on it.
Oh, okay.
So, like, if you've ever seen like a formal event of athletic whatever on a military, or rather on a service academy campus, like, they're pretty fun events. So I'd go to game day on a military campus, or service academy campus for sure. And probably one of the Florida schools.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's really where it's at. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
So those are probably my choices.
Okay.
Sorry, I ain't got no West Coast Pac-10. You know what I mean? Not happening right now. I'd probably rather go see a softball game in the Pac-10 than I would a football game.
It's okay, because I guarantee you if game day came back to Oregon, I could convince you to come out, so.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Right. I mean, I know a lot of people out there, not including you, so I would definitely do that. But, like, as far as things I would seek out, yeah, those probably the 3.
Cool. Okay, fair enough. Accepted. In closing, I know it's been a couple of long, rough weeks for you, but just give us a little bit of touch on your summarization of the Redskins ordeal. I don't want to have you spend too much time on it because I know it's been a pretty emotional thing for you because It's your whole entire upbringing. But if you could maybe sum up 3 or 4 sentences of what this has all been about for you and what it has signified for you, and what you can kind of encourage people to take with them about it, that would be really awesome.
I think that, like, 2020 for America, and to some extent the globe, has been largely about a certain reckoning.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm a decent NASCAR fan, and I remember when they decided they were going to ban the Confederate flag.
Yep.
You know, I tweeted about it, but my literal first thought was, yo, this is the kind of thing that could lead to Washington's football team having to change their name.
Right.
And because I thought to myself, yo, like, if the Confederate flag can come down at
NASCAR,
this crappy team could sure enough change their name.
Yeah.
And the reason I say all that is because, you know, that was one thing. And then when the story came out about toxically disgusting misogynistic culture, it was like, yo, like, there's nothing to stand on here. Like, we got to really take a look at what matters here. This team is terrible.
Yeah.
The name is racist. And
the culture sucks.
The culture sucks, right. So it was like, why would we continue to do this? And I think that's kind of what all of 2020 has been about for America, is really thinking, why are we continuing to do this?
Right.
You know, and I think that's where you ask something to take away. I think if every time people are challenged, I don't mean people worrying about cancel culture and everybody being offended. That's not the point. The point is, like, yo, if somebody says something to you that's like, hey man, this has been messing me up for a long time in my life, let's consider changing it.
Yeah.
Like, what do you lose by changing?
Right.
Some notion of your childhood going away, and are you really sure whatever that notion was is really worth it to begin with?
Right.
Do you understand that it might have harmed the entire time that you enjoyed it, and why that's so important in terms of the pillars of fun that we consider in society? You look at college football, like you mentioned, dog, there's so many buildings, so many stadiums, so many things that are just named after terrible people.
Yep.
And like, bro, we're not going to stop doing other things just because you rename a building.
Right.
And so, you know, that's
Preach.
my takeaway. If somebody says, hey, we got to look at this, take them seriously.
Yep.
There's no reason not to, you know, and that's kind of what I think America's learned in 2020, and I'm not mad at it. I mean, I happen to be a black person who is on sort of, I guess, one side of the equation because, you know, it ain't necessarily my people.
Right.
But when it comes to that football team, yo, that was my people. That was me that supported that squad.
Yeah.
You know? So
yeah,
I
your
have to
money,
take
your family's money.
responsibility for that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't say that word. I don't give that guy money. But that wasn't enough. You know, we got to figure out what it really means to come to terms with things that were messed up. You know, in 2020, it's time's up on that, yo. Gotta do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, like I said, for touching on that. I know it's been like super big deal for you, and I didn't want to get too deep into it. I've listened to a couple of the podcasts and a couple of the radio shows that you've sat in on over the last couple of weeks. So I really appreciate your thoughts and how honest you're able to be with people about that because of your involvement, even as a black man, your involvement in what you think is just absolutely wrong and frankly disgusting. So I don't think that anybody can get anywhere with change without that type of honesty with themselves.
Yeah, I mean, look, Tay, I mean, the bottom line is, like, I mean, my dad was the one who introduced me to that team.
Yeah.
He was also the one who told me, yo, we ain't doing this no more.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And he got in my face about it.
Yeah.
Like, for real. And I was like, yo, are you serious? Like,
yeah.
You know, and I was like, all right, I mean, I guess he is. I guess I got to think about this. And I did.
Yeah.
You know, and I talked to him the other day about that. I was like, yo, man, thank you. Like, that was a real rudder.
Right.
You know, when I didn't necessarily know where I was guided. He was like, of course, man. I mean, he said it wasn't as easy for me. Not that it was so hard, but he was like, dog, I looked at that guy as Snyder, and my dad was one of the early guys who was like, yo, this dude ain't nothing.
Right.
We ain't banging with this.
Right.
You know? And over time, he was right.
Yeah.
You know? And I got my dad. I mean, I got a subsistence to East Rugby He rooted for that team long before Snyder was ever involved. So when he went away, I was like, all right, man.
Yeah.
You know, I got you. You know, so.
Yeah, good on Dad, man. He knew from the start.
Yeah, Pops is smart.
Awesome. Well, Clinton, you've given us a lot of your time, so I don't want to take up much more, but thank you so much for joining little old me here on Sports Talk Mostly podcast. I appreciate you, and hopefully we can do this again sometime when there's way more sports to talk about and way less drama.
Absolutely. All right. Be safe. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Have a great night. Okay. We're back. I hope you guys loved that interview with Clinton. Thank you, Clinton, so much for your time and your thoughts, and hopefully we'll get you back on here when we got some more sports to talk about. So make sure you guys go follow Clinton. Make sure you guys keep an eye on him. He's always talking about quality things in the sports world, and frankly, I think he has some opinions that a lot of people need to hear, and offers a very fresh and oftentimes logical perspective on a lot of issues. And as you heard us discuss, he has an incredible talent for relating real life issues to sports related situations, and I think that sometimes it's so valuable to get that relevance when you're inserting yourself into a situation or inserting yourself into learning about a situation that you don't know a lot about. So thank you to Clinton so much. Definitely one of my favorite interviews I've done so far. But let's talk culture topics. There's a big one that's been going around. Hashtag free Woj. Obviously, Adrian Wojnarowski was suspended by ESPN. If you don't know the backstory, basically what happened was a Missouri senator, can't remember his name, don't really want to, sent him an email basically saying, essentially, keep your political opinions out of your sports reporting. And Adrian responded back to the man, simply, fuck you. And I can't say I blame the guy, honestly. I mean, if you're going to seek out my work email and approach me with your thoughts on what I choose to report and what I am approved by my network to report, like he said, fuck off. I mean, that's just my that's my take on it. I feel so bad for Woj. I don't know what his future holds. Obviously, he's extremely influential in the sports world as far as breaking news goes. That's why we call them Woj bombs. He's the person that informs us all of these insanely huge breaking news pieces in sports. And obviously, his kind of rival in that is Shams Sharina. And Shams is still doing all the breaking news and stuff, but personally, I prefer Woj. So free Woj. I just think the whole suspension thing was a little unnecessary. So that's my thoughts on that. Had to get it in. It's just one of those things you're kind of like mind blown about, I feel like, when it comes up. So like I said, I just had to stop and talk on that. Moving back towards the WNBA conversation, in regards to culture topics, big news story was circulating involving Elena Delle Donne, and I have huge issues with this. I think the league needs to do better. I think the league needs to basically disregard the opinion of these doctors and give this woman her pay for the season and let her sit out. If you don't know, Elena Delle Donne has Lyme disease. She's battled most of her life with Lyme disease, and the WNBA doctors determined her medically able to play. But she did have an interview in which she said it would take her around 62 different prescriptions to get her body in a place to where she is at less of a risk of contracting COVID, and she's at less risk of major medical needs if she were to contract COVID. So this is a huge deal. Liz Cambage was actually determined medically exempt, and she had a run-in with COVID about last year. She was playing actually overseas in China and got incredibly sick. And Liz Cambage has been determined medically exempt to play. So unless I have missed some news regarding Elena Delle Donne's medical decision by the WNBA doctors, that's my stance on it. I just don't think that you can declare one person medically exempt and then another medically safe, and their medical situations are actually really similar. So definitely think that the WNBA needs to do a little bit better on that. I don't think that it should have even come to that. I don't think it should come to public pressure telling the WNBA, like, pay this woman. But those are my thoughts. So rolling into another woman-related topic, this time in the MLB. As you guys know, I have previously highlighted women in coaching positions in sports, and I want to continue to do that, so that's why I am talking about this woman and this particular news piece. Alyssa Mackin is, I believe, either third or first base coach. I cannot remember which, and I apologize, but she is the first woman in MLB history to coach in an on-field capacity in league history. So big coaching additions in both NFL and MLB as far as including women in this past season, this past calendar year. Obviously we had the San Francisco 49ers with Katie Thomas, I believe is her name, coaching for them as an offensive coordinator. So definitely still trying to highlight these women earning big positions and big opportunities in sports, because it's a big deal obviously male-dominated industry, and we want to continue to highlight these women who have a high enough IQ and a well enough sense of the game to be included in these situations. So big kudos to Alyssa Mackin. I definitely hope she sees some more field time in her coaching position with them, and really excited to see where this all takes her, definitely. So also in women's sports news, the National Women's Soccer League is coming to Los Angeles in 2022, and this is a big deal because they have a large panel of women ownership. Natalie Portman, Serena Williams, and Mia Hamm are all amongst the ownership group for the National Women's Soccer League. And obviously this taking place in LA, no surprise at all. That's a very good place to kind of centralize this league and bring these teams together. Obviously they will each be around the country in their various spots, but to have LA be the headquarters for this new league, I think is a great idea. And I'm really excited to see the types of opportunities that this creates for women in soccer, not just for playing opportunities, but also for pay opportunities. As we know, MLS soccer and the female players have been battling for quite some time about the equal pay. And I think that this is a very good solution to those issues. So very excited to see where they decide to place teams, the players they decide to recruit, and how the start of that league grows. Definitely huge, and honestly I'm not surprised that Serena Williams and Mia Hamm are a part of it, but I can tell you I was actually a little bit surprised to see that Natalie Portman was a part of it, but very excited because she's an extremely smart, talented, and influential woman in her industry, and she has been a part of a lot of philanthropy related topics regarding hunger and safety and women's rights. So I think it's only appropriate that Natalie Portman is a part of that ownership group, and like I said, I'm super excited to see how that all comes together. So I guess I've covered everything. I think I have talked your guys' ears off enough today. This is going to be probably the longest episode in quite a while, so I hope you guys enjoy it. But to close up, we will talk about some predictions. Most of these are honestly just my favorites right now. I think it's been a little bit too long, especially in NBA and MLB, those sports that were basically already starting their seasons. It is going to be like a favorites game for a couple of weeks until we see who really got their shit together, I guess, during quarantine and COVID cancellations. So leading off with the WNBA predictions, they start this Saturday. We have Storm versus Liberty and Sparks versus Mercury are the two games that I'm predicting for. And obviously Seattle Storm, New York Liberty. Huge Sue Bird fan. She's been with the Seattle Storm for, I want to say 8 seasons now. I'm probably wrong. But I'm taking the New York Liberty because my girl Sabrina Ionescu is with them. Obviously first pick in the WNBA draft. Out of Oregon, and I'm taking the Liberty. I got to take my girl Brina. So excited to see her in a WNBA uniform, and just really excited to see her learn the flow of the game at this next level. And then Sparks versus Mercury. I'm taking the Sparks. My girl Candace Parker, obviously another Tennessee Volunteer. Sparks versus Mercury. I'm taking the Sparks. They're without Shanae Ogwumike, unfortunately, for the season, but they still have a powerhouse roster, and honestly, I think the Sparks might be the team to beat this year, so we will see. You can mark my words, because that's what predictions are for. NBA predictions, we have Clippers versus Lakers, and I gotta tell you guys, I'm switching sides on this one. At the beginning of the season, I was all Clippers. I definitely thought the Clippers were going to be the team of LA for this season, but I've changed my mind. I'm taking the Lakers for this, and yes, part of that is because I would love to see them win a 17th for Kobe. But my next prediction may interfere with that, so we'll see. Grizzlies versus Blazers. Obviously, I am taking the Blazers, and as I just mentioned, obviously, I would love if my Blazers won a championship this year. So we'll see how that shakes out. The great Charles Barkley said that if the Blazers face the Lakers in playoffs, that the Lakers will lose. So I don't know if that's going to be a curse or a prediction, but I hope King Charles was right. Sir Charles, excuse me. I hope Sir Charles was right, because that would be badass. And if the Blazers were the reason the Lakers didn't win a 17th for Kobe, yeah, it might suck, but I'd be okay with it. And then lastly, in NBA predictions, we have Celtics versus Bucks. I think these are the two teams of the Eastern Conference that are being predicted to be the Eastern Conference finalist. And I'm going with Celtics. I just don't think the Bucks have what it takes to knock them off. So we'll see, but I am taking the Celtics. And then MLB predictions before we wrap it up here. We have Angels versus A's as the first 3-game series, and I'm taking the A's. I think some of you know I spent some time growing up in the Bay Area in the summertime as a child, and the A's have always been my Bay Area team. Yes, I'm a Yankees fan, but I will root for the A's when they're not playing the Yankees. So, last but not least, next week, after the Yankees versus Nats series concludes, the Yankees move on to play the Phillies, and I'm taking the Yankees. You guessed it. So, definitely hope you guys pay attention to those predictions. I want to make this fun. I definitely want to include some of your guys' predictions, so if you want to challenge me, you want to get in the conversation, please do. And honestly, that does it for episode 12. So, like I said, I really hope you guys enjoyed the interview with Clinton Yates. Thank you again so much to him for lending us his time. And make sure you check out the secret segment portion. There are, like I said, 4 or 5 of them on there now, and 10 random questions with every interview guest separate from the episode. So make sure you check that out, and as always, thank you so much for stopping by to listen. I appreciate you, and we'll see you next episode.
Stop. Got that West Coast wave, fuck around and catch a West Coast fade. We go up, post up. Both teams played hard. Harder.